There are, as you will see on your chart, over on the right, I believe it is, soul ages, and then it says soul levels. Just before that, there's a whole column. Where's the soul age column on the one I gave you? No. It's
The last one.
All right, the last one on the right.
Soul maturity.
Look at the first chart. Hey,
First page, dear. Right there.
over on the far right, Paul, is on the far right for you, which is on the left. Right, they're soul ages, okay? And it gives you little brief comments about them. And I'm going to read it to you in greater length, all right? The motto of the infant soul is, let's not do it. These cycles, like physical infancy, have a very limited range of perceptions and activities. For that reason, many infant souls are born into very simple stations in life, and they will find any demand or complexity frightening. New experiences are more apt to terrify than excite them. The infant or firstborn soul perceives itself and the world around it simply as me and not me. Everything that isn't me is simply not me, and it's all lumped together as one big thing. In this cycle, there are no memories from past lives to speak of. If not me is perceived as hostile and unkind early in life, a condition known as autism can develop as withdrawal occurs. It's not the only cause of autism, but it is one cause of autism. If this perception occurs later, the soul may react with unchecked violence. It may be sadistic, murder without visible cause can occur. They truly don't know the difference between right and wrong, but they can be taught laws of common sense or decency, but they do not have an innate understanding of right versus wrong. That just isn't there. Intellect is a product of culture, and even firstborn or infant souls can be taught to read and to write and to compute arithmetically. They rarely seek higher education unless forced to. They are bewildered and hostile in strange situations. They do not, in general, seek employment. It is a characteristic they share with very old souls. Not just old souls, but very old souls. Later, little old souls, okay? Many infant souls are regarded by complex technological cultures as mentally lacking and may erroneously be identified as mentally deficient. This is not necessarily true. They just seem that way. The infant soul adopts the religion of its parents without modification, although its interest is cursory and its understanding is quite poor. The infant soul perceives love only in the form of lust. It performs a sex act with all the frenzy of a wild animal, completely dependent upon some innate estrus, which in both sexes is lost in all of the higher cycles. And it is powerless to change any of these things. This is what the infant soul is. It cannot be more than this. It can't help it. Infant souls cook and eat to survive. The food is usually tasteless and overcooked. The souls are fearful of almost everything. Their kitchens are usually antiseptically clean. They are often bitten by dogs who have no previous history of biting simply because of the inordinate fear that they broadcast. Most infant souls wouldn't be caught dead on horseback, but allergies to animals are very common in this cycle. Okay? Now that's the infant soul. Fortunately, there aren't a lot of them on this planet, but that's what the infant soul is. Each of these soul ages takes seven levels to get through the soul age. And it can take 6 lifetimes to get through one level of one soul age, which means to get through the infant soul age would generally take 6 times 7, 42 lifetimes. That's right. Just to get through that. But we have very few infant souls at this time on this planet. All right? Now the baby soul, the motto is, do it right or not at all. Remember, the infant was, let's not do it at all. But at least with the baby soul, they want you to do it right or not at all. And of course, they know what's right. They are a bit more complex than the smaller one. It's sort of like they've learned to toddle, and here they're learning to run and climb trees. The baby soul perceives itself and the world around it as me and many other me's. Which means, when you encounter a baby soul, they absolutely know that you are like them. And any action you take, they look at why they would do it, and they assume, quite automatically, that that's why you're doing it. So if it's something they would only do for a negative reason, then you must have a negative reason for doing it. That's simply, and they can't understand it any other way, because they can't understand you being different from me. You are just like me, except that you may act differently, but you are like me. That's really important to understand. This is where you begin to understand some of the people you meet in this world. The baby soul forms very strong beliefs early in childhood. They borrow them from those around them, and they are literally unshakable. The baby soul normally is agreeable and the pillar of the community until an opposing viewpoint is expressed. Then inwardly, the soul is bewildered and baffled by the difference. Outwardly, it will express anger, hostility, negative emotional energy, belligerence. The baby soul occasionally seeks higher education, and it does well in small, conservative, liberal arts colleges, trade schools, or such, where it learns proper subjects and is often a very good student. These souls rarely rise to prominence, but occasionally they do. But it is not at all unusual to find them occupying important spots in smaller environments, or working with true dedication for various organizations. Baby souls sometimes seek to become the big fish in a tiny puddle rather than seeking national acclaim. No matter what area of endeavor they enter, baby souls seek to fulfill their roles in a different sense, since preserving the status quo is the goal of this cycle. All baby souls want to keep things exactly as they are. Change is terrifying to them. If the baby soul views its own sexuality, it does view its own sexuality. Sorry, I'm skipping. It tends to be fundamentalistic in its religious beliefs, and personification of the Godhead is strongest in the baby soul cycle. And it absolutely believes in the forces of evil. It views its own sexuality with a vague uneasiness, and if the culture fosters such, it will think of it as somehow shameful. The baby soul will be embarrassed by overt displays of honest sexuality, and it will strive to keep others around it bound down by its own reprehensible moral code. Behind closed doors, the baby soul, more often than not, is every bit as prudish as it is in public, and it seldom sustains any sort of sensual pleasure. Not having experienced such, it naturally doesn't believe in the existence of the experience. Just as the baby soul's kitchen is antiseptically clean, this it shares with the infant soul. The food is apt to be tasteless and uninteresting, but at least it doesn't usually get overcooked. Baby souls know what kind of food is good for you, and they will rarely venture beyond the most simple fare. All baby souls somatize. Any medical patient who fixates on a particular organ system can usually be categorized immediately as a baby soul. For instance, all elderly ladies with bowel fixations are baby souls. They are ashamed of their sexuality, whether it be homosexual or heterosexual. Baby souls are prone to use the courts excessively when their sense of justice has been outrageously insulted, a thing that's not difficult to do. The baby soul has such a strong sense of right and wrong, and his opinion of himself is often quite exalted. Okay, does this make sense? Now you get to the young souls. And that's what this world is top-heavy in, is young souls. The motto of the young soul is do it my way. They at least know there is another way. But they're bound and determined to get you to do it their way. This is the most active worldly outward cycle. This is the time when the material world is absolutely the focus of this soul. It's the time when the greatest progress in relation to the physical plane is made. Things accomplished at these levels have to do with doing, and they often take up a great deal of time. Since the nature of the young soul is try to bring others around to its own point of view, whatever that point of view is. Young souls are in the majority in your world. They are largely motivated by the desire for material achievement. This is an adventuresome time with the soul ranging into new territory. This is where the movers and shakers are found. Young souls are eager to take on tasks in the physical plane and often set themselves impossible goals in their lives. They are the architects of civilization. The young soul perceives itself and the world around it in quite a different manner than in the preceding cycles. It perceives itself as me, and it perceives you as you. But it experiences the need to bring you around to its point of view. Young souls rarely question their motivation, as they are limited by their perceptions in a way that more mature souls are not. The young soul almost always seeks higher education, usually graduate degrees. The young soul is a tireless worker for its cause and will go through unbelievable hardship to bring this cause to bear. Education can be an example of this. Achievement is the watchword of this cycle. Young souls seek the larger ocean as the sphere of their activities. The young soul, if religiously inclined, tends toward orthodoxy in the extreme. It will campaign tirelessly against all religious reform. If the young soul happens to have grown up in an environment in which it became atheistic, it will be equally tireless in its efforts to get rid of the... Just a minute. To get rid of the...
Did not end up in the right order.
In its efforts to wipe out the orthodoxy of others. The young soul's own personal opinion of sex is rather low. It will do its best to convince others around it that sex is evil and should be eschewed. Renunciate monks and nuns are quite often young souls. They renounce loudly, and they take every opportunity to remind the world around them that they have renounced. On the other hand, the young soul can be an equally zealous proponent of total sexual freedom. The young soul perceives love as eros, solely predicated upon those expectations it has of others around it. If the others fail to live up to those expectations, it can hate with equal zest. Sexual conflicts can be agonizing in this cycle, early training versus internal urge. Early cycle young souls tend to adhere to the food patterns learned in childhood. You may have noticed from that last part, this is where the rage over homosexuality shows up. The young soul that just has to stop you being it if you are, because they have the orthodox belief. Of course, if they happen to be homosexual in a young soul, then they want to bring you around to the acceptance of everything. It's just totally, that's where you find all of the really anger and movements against abortion and things, mostly come out of young souls. People in different cycles may have some of the same beliefs, they just don't have the energy that they put into it. Where am I? Where did I get lost? Okay, here I am. Sorry. Early cycle young souls tend to adhere to the food patterns learned in childhood. In the middle of the cycle, experimentation is rampant, but the appetite is usually poor. Late cycle young souls continue to experiment with food, and foreign food fetishes often develop. Memories of past are stronger now, and the deja vu draws them to certain types of food. Young souls often own status pets, such as ocelots and lhasa apsos. Young souls ride the rodeo. Again, they may also have allergies, which simply express certain denials. Allergies to animals I'm talking about. The young soul is much attached to the physical body, and lessons are often not learned, even in the intervals between. The young soul seeks to return as soon as possible to this planet, to this reality, Being out of the body is unpleasant for a young soul. It's terrifying for a baby soul. It's interesting to a mature soul, and it's welcomed by an old soul.
So all angels are old souls.
I don't know that they are in the cycle of man.
No.
That seems to be something different. Okay? When we get to it. The motto of the mature soul is, do it any place but here. They don't care what you do, as long as you don't impose it on them. This is the most difficult of all the cycles. In the mature cycle, attention turns inward and there is a new awareness. This is often the most difficult cycle since the emerging awareness of others demands a new perception of them. There's a general bombardment of unfamiliar stimuli during the mature cycle. This is difficult to cope with at best. If a soul has chosen a passive role in body, the pressure can become intolerable, especially if poor environmental choices were made for this life. These are difficult cycles demanding much introspection, often seeming to give very little peace in return. The hard-won lessons of the young cycles are brought to bear on the mature soul. It is the most difficult of all cycles, for the mature soul perceives others as they perceive themselves. And because of these perceptions, the mature soul will often seek to sever relationships seemingly for no reason, or by the same token seek to perpetuate outwardly inappropriate relationships. If you and I are both mature souls, within this framework are also your experiences of me. In other words, while I'm experiencing you, you are experiencing me. And at the same time, you are aware of my experience of you. And upon this deeper awareness, you and I will base any future social intercourse. As you can imagine, sometimes this makes living difficult. The mature soul is not as open to the occult as the old soul. Now, to be open to the occult at all, you almost have to be a mature soul. Mostly, to come to a class like this, you'd be an old soul. By the way, how many of you cut the rotten spots off of the fruit and go ahead and eat the fruit?
I do.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
How about, just you won't eat the rotten spots, just eat the rest. How about cutting mold off of cheese and then using the cheese? Only old souls do that. Not every old soul does it. The majority do. But nobody who isn't an old soul does it. All the other soul levels just can't tolerate the idea of eating a piece of fruit that has a rotten spot, even if they're nowhere near the rotten spot and they can't tolerate eating cheese mold that's been cut from. Therefore, they usually hate blue cheese and Roquefort and a few others that require mold, okay?
Best salad in the world has blue cheese crumbles and Italian dressing.
Well, at your age, you won't have the same appetite for food that she does anyway. I didn't like that until I was much older. But the whole thing is, and that is one of the funniest things in the world to observe, is that, and you can sometimes really tell because people get so uptight over your using, or let the cat lick your plate. Oh my God. A lot of old souls don't even like that. Yeah, I let them lick my plate, but then I wash it. There's a difference. They're not going to do any more damage than I did. But if you have to wash it afterwards, that's the whole thing. If you're washing it anyway, why not? And that's why I have dogs. One of the reasons I have dogs is they keep all the grease from going down my sink and stopping it up. Well, what can I tell you? That's just my approach. I don't expect all old souls to have that approach either. Anyway, the mature soul perceives beauty with a clarity not found in earlier cycles. At the end of the cycle, the mature soul begins to perceive truth, and this prepares the soul for the search. This is not to say that the mature soul is isolated from its fellows, quite the contrary. When the mature souls perceive the unhappy ones, they desire to shield themselves from the unpleasant vibrations. In other words, when the young souls and the baby, when all these others are around them, they just want to be shielded from all the vibrations coming from them. It's very difficult for them to handle. By the way, not all young souls at all are unhappy, but the unhappy ones are the ones that drive mature souls crazy. You've already experienced the backlash from this, but know this full well. You cannot alter their play no matter how much you love them. It is the nature of mature soul to seek and question the motivation for all of life's actions. When this occurs, there's a gradual opening up of the soul, and when this happens, we can make limited contact. More of the unused portion of the brain comes into play during this cycle, and psychic phenomena occur with more frequency until they are finally acknowledged and the serious work begins. This is made more difficult because this cycle is really fraught with artificial behavior based on past lives, things they haven't yet learned. More so than in any other cycle, the perception of the older soul begins to emerge, but the understanding does not. Perception they begin to get, understanding of it they don't. Mature souls feel all the hostile vibrations around them. They have a need to remove themselves from this, but they are too caught up in the traditional mores to remove themselves entirely. They feel a sense of duty, which does not dissipate until the transition to old soul is made. This is why a skilled therapist would be of help to a mature soul. And by therapist, we do not mean a young soul practicing psychiatry. I love that line. You see, a young soul practicing psychiatry has learned the words, the forms, and the techniques, but they don't really understand them. They don't have the knowing of them, so they don't have an innate sense of how to use what they're doing. Therefore, they're not really very helpful. They just keep you going and going and going and going. In the mature cycle, there is acute perception of the veil that lies between the real and artificial space, and as never before, a longing to penetrate it, to go beyond the senses, to glimpse the pan-dimensional, to know that you are not alone in the void. You must walk out on the thin ice, and in that way test the physical universe and its response to your plea. Most mature souls feel this, and in some way they translate it into dreams of incredible strength and strange beauty. Not many, unfortunately, retain the memory of these dreams. They retain the memory of having had them, but they can't recall the dream itself. When a soul not in teaching encounters the true personality in essence for the first time, it's a devastating experience. This usually comes about in moments of extreme stress, grief, or sometimes even trauma. It can, however, come about if the soul is suddenly catapulted into a situation so unusual that none of the memories of experiences and feelings of lives is applicable. It applies in this case to the dream as well as all unusual situations. It's undeniably true that none of you has a permanent tape telling you how to react to the surface of the moon. And it's conceivable that all of you would encounter your true personality were you to find yourselves at the controls of a large jet aircraft without any prior training to guide you except perhaps a few flying lessons in a small propeller-driven plane. These things can bring this about. Mature souls seek an almost unknown quality in their lives. They know they are seeking, but they are generally unclear what it is they seek. For this reason, mature souls do not usually enjoy life unless they are surrounded by souls in bliss. This is a difficult cycle. We must emphasize the difficulty. The mature soul is beset with many problems, all intrinsic. The only way to help is to make the environment non-stressful so it has a sanctuary. The mature soul often seeks professional help on its own. It always seeks higher education, although not always in an institutional setting. It is often too uncomfortable in a school setting. The mature soul makes a massive contribution to knowledge, both philosophical and scientific. Karl Marx, Alfred Adler, Fritz Perls, Sigmund Freud, Immanuel Kant, Aristotle, and Albert Einstein were all mature souls. There is a real change of emphasis in the public lives and careers of mature souls. Mature souls pursue their public lives for very different reasons than the young soul. After all, they are questing. and their work will coincide with the nature of their quest. Whereas the young soul, you see, wants to do something, the mature soul is seeking to understand or discover something in what they do. Religion becomes self-motivated in the mature soul cycle. They seek quiet faith, Quakerism, Unitarianism, Buddhism. Which doesn't mean everybody belonging to those faiths is a mature or old soul, okay? But they will be very largely mature or beyond souls. With the right partner, another mature soul has become centered, or an older soul. The mature soul can be an ardent lover. The love is deep and lasting. For agape is possible during this cycle if the inner conflicts are resolved. With the wrong partner, there's apathy, impotency, rigidity, infidelity. This soul has more of a tendency to mate for life than any of the other cycles, providing a comfortable mating occurs. Mature souls make fine chefs. They enjoy precision cooking and gourmet dining. Their hollandaise sauce does not curdle, it wouldn't dare. Wine fetishes are at their height in this cycle. A mature soul wouldn't serve a Zinfandel with lobster. An old soul wouldn't hesitate for a moment if Zinfandel happened to be its favorite wine. The pets belonging to mature souls will most often reflect their owners' personalities. Many winners of obedience trials belong to mature souls, and they ride to the hounds. And as if all this were not enough, infant souls are often given to mature souls for growth. So mature souls who want to get away from them frequently have them as their parents, sometimes as their children, sometimes just as their friends or their brothers and sisters, but they will come into their lives, or even as their spouses. This just happens. Now we get to the old soul. The motto of the old soul is, you do what you want, I'll do what I want. There's a chance of change of pace here. In previous cycles, the soul was not drawn to the search with the same intensity that it is in the old cycle. There is a newer, more profound creativity which is part of the search. The old soul perceives others as a part of something greater that includes itself. And with this comes the realization that there are no problems except those created by false personality as a defense. But it is difficult for old souls to break these patterns because old souls, more often than not, seek the route of least resistance. The older soul usually enjoys hard manual labor, but seldom works as an artisan. It may or may not seek higher education. If pressure is exerted by the guru, it will. Or if it senses that its task somehow involves the necessity for obtaining the proper credentials. For this reason, many old souls are gardeners. Young souls with fabulous estates pay them well to exercise this inborn talent. The money thus gained is used to perpetuate the influence of the physical body in this plane. In other words, the money takes care of eating and clothing and sheltering. Doesn't take care of the spiritual aspects. There is another aspect to this. The old soul at a deeper level realizes the futility and temporary nature of material achievements, and therefore it lacks the drive to accomplish them. All old souls are extremely competent, even in roles that are out of their essence, and we'll get to the roles in a minute. The drive now is for spiritual evolution in all old souls. Therefore, they are inclined to let the rest slide. Any one of them could achieve anything they wish to, but more often than not, old souls choose to have lives in which the usual working world and survival struggle will not touch them. In their work, they tend to choose an occupation that is pleasant or not particularly demanding, so that they will be free to pursue their real goals without hardship. Unless the employment aids the search, for that reason, final level old souls rarely seek remunerative employment for any period of time. The religion of the old souls is expansive, and it includes unorthodox rituals. Groves of trees become cathedrals, and the presence of the realized masters is often felt by older souls. The synthesis is perceived in the final cycle, and old souls seldom cling to dogma. The old soul is casual about sex in the earlier levels because erotic love begins to lose its charm. In the final level, the old soul often does not participate for lack of purpose, since sex has nothing to like. The old soul, however, is intensely sensual and does enjoy close physical contact. So the old soul is usually an experienced, exciting partner for souls in an earlier cycle, but it can be a very disappointing lover because of its nonchalance. Old souls are casual cooks. They use recipes as guidelines rather than gospel. They tend to use spices and herbs freely, and they will cut the mold from the cheese and rotten spots from the fruit rather than throw the food away. Old souls feel at home with living things. Winemaking is an ancient art, and most vintners are older souls, and they may have been vintners before, returning to that art most gladly. They can indulge their penchant for gardening, make a living, and avoid the rat race all at the same time. Most older souls do find comfort and have affinities for other creatures. Most older souls inspire confidence in the animals, and the animals respond quite naturally to this. Some older souls even find that this affinity extends to wild and feral animals. Several in this group have demonstrated any bad experience with animals at an early age will cause some abhorrence. The older soul does not generally extend this beyond the offending species, nor does it reach the phobic stage, as in the case of primary experiences dating back to previous lives. Most shaggy dogs belong to old souls. Old souls begin to relate to wild animals and often have an affinity for all living creatures. Old souls ride to the trails. What old souls do not understand yet is that they are all caught up in a device that is the last gathering together. That is what the old soul cycle is all about. All old souls come at last to philosophy and the arts. Some come more obnoxiously than others, but they come nevertheless. All over the world, the entity fragments are searching for that feeling of home. Some do not know what it is they search for, but they experience the emptiness. The nature of the perceptions in the old soul is seeking the greater whole. Most old soul's things have to do with being. We remind you that in terms of evolution of the essence, the old soul cycle is the most demanding of all, since memory of the past, as well as the experience of the lives, is within the grasp of all those in this cycle. Any questions? Does this all make sense?
Can somebody raise in a soul level within a lifetime?
Not that I know of. I suppose if you're in the 7th level of one, you could go into the 1st level of the next during a lifetime. It wouldn't be that different. You have to make the transition sometimes, so I suppose it's possible in a lifetime, but it's not very common.
Can someone like be a child and behave one way and then as an adult behave 180-degree way difference?
Well, of course somebody can.
But like if I was a kid, my family wouldn't hug. I couldn't have stood you hugging me as a child.
Well, you hadn't learned to hug.
Right. If something happened when I was 9 and I became a very mature person.
People in this class have taken a class called numerology. And one of the things we learn in numerology is that childhood lasts up to 35 years, from about 26 to 35 years. During that time, you recover what you have been in your past lives.
Right, yes.
So that's still your childhood. The childhood's a time of reaching to where you already are.
I'm really remembering me as a child a lot lately.
Well, what I'm saying is, the child is having to relearn, and it's having to go through all of these to get to wherever it is. Some children don't go beyond things of childhood because they're not beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
But others go through a whole series of steps. Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's how you do it in one lifetime that way. But you're not changing soul ages, you're just growing up to the age you are. Anything else? Does this begin to make sense of some of the people around you that might not have made sense before? The one thing you want to understand is a young soul cannot understand the perspective of a mature or an old soul. They can't. You can't teach them, you can't make them understand your perspective. There's no point in trying because they just can't do it.
I'm surrounded by them.
Well, you're in a world where we're all surrounded by them.
Of course, I lived within walking distance of here. I lived within walking distance of Western Missouri.
It doesn't matter. That's not... If you live within walking distance of other humans on this planet, you are surrounded by young souls.
I believe you. I believe you very
Except for 1 or 2 countries, and we get to that a little later. Okay?
Okay, me.
Any questions for you? Make sense? How about you? Does it help make sense to some people? I mean, understand, you don't have to peg this person and say this is an old soul, this is a young, but to understand the differences and that we are where we are. And I mean, it's much more complex than just soul age. But to begin to understand it, anyway. There are two soul ages that don't manifest very often on the physical plane. They are the infinite and transcendental. They also go through levels, but they don't do it in the physical world that much. They come occasionally. Being non-physical except in times of manifestation, these high souls don't need a motto. The transcendental soul experiences others as itself. It recognizes everyone as being potentially the Buddha. Recognizes everyone as potentially a Buddha. Unique and individual, but still at that level. Still, that is what it is. Telepathic rapport and psychic union occur. These exalted souls seldom seek reincarnation in the physical body. If they do, it's usually because of the spiritual or philosophical ennui existing on the planet. And then they normally precede the descent of a realized master by less than 100 years. The transcendental soul can enter the physical body and displace an old soul when the old soul is ready to leave. Usually it's the same. Usually what happens, it's not said here, is that simply it comes as an old soul incarnation of itself, and it steps in and sort of says, okay, I'll step up to this level now when it's ready. The presence of a transcendental soul alone has sometimes been enough to provoke the needed spiritual, philosophical, or cultural revolution on the planet. The infinite soul perceives the Tao. The transcendental soul seldom seeks any sort of formal education, though it will go along cheerfully unless the education interferes too greatly with its purpose. Then it will gently but firmly break away. The infinite soul has direct access to all knowledge and has no need for education of any type. The transcendental soul perceives the synthesis and it teaches it as such. It will not espouse popular dogma, and it does not affiliate with organized religion. The religion of the infinite soul is the Logos. Neither the transcendental soul nor the infinite soul pursues physical union. Quite often, however, the high causal body or the high mental body displaces the older soul part, and at that time the manifestation of sexual activity ceases. The infinite soul is manifested through the physical forms of Lao Tzu, Sri Krishna, Siddhartha Gautama, and Jesus. In other words, the founder of the Hindu religion, Krishna, Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao, the Buddha,
What was
and
Muhammad?
Jesus. Huh?
What was Muhammad?
Prophet.
Transcendental, not infinite. Transcendental soul is manifested through Socrates, Zarathustra, Muhammad, Gandhi, and others. Okay?
Yeah.
Since you asked.
What is a transcendental soul type?
Huh?
What type is a transcendental soul?
What do you mean, what type?
What's the character? I didn't know what the character.
They have a lot of characteristics in common with the infinite, but they don't seek education, but they'll quite cheerfully go along with it if it fits in with where it is, as long as it doesn't interfere with what they're doing. The transcendental soul will not object to things as long as they do not interfere with their course.
And what's the name?
Only 4 on this planet: Jesus, the Buddha, Krishna, and Lao Tzu. And they come as teachers. They don't need education at all. They don't go through schools. But if you'll notice, even in the life of Jesus or in the life of the Buddha, going back to your childhood, they went through childhood experiences before they reached the age at which they were being. Jesus' ministry was in his,
30 to 33.
I know it's 3 years, but I said, the Buddha, his ministry, his teaching didn't occur until he was grown, his children were grown, which is what time he walked away from the palace, and he was a prince, and walked away and started seeking and talking actually about the truth to people. So even these souls sort of wake up. They sit there in the body at a lesser level, and then they suddenly wake up to what they are, and at that point they have to start being what they are. Okay? This is true also of the transcendental. This writer talks about them taking over a body from somebody else. It's not what I believe. It's not what I've seen. What I've seen is that it is the same soul, but it's a higher incarnation that sort of sits back and waits until the growth has gotten into the brain and then steps in and acts is what it is. But it isn't a different person, and it doesn't feel like a different person into that soul. So even those go through some sort of childhood freedom. But the child, as you can see in some of the Hindu things, the child can be very, very advanced even in childhood. Some of the thoughts of a child, but some of them won't be. That's the whole thing. In some ways, the child will be very advanced. In some ways, it will still be growing up. But that's all ages. Next, we get to the roles. Now, and the thing the thing that got me interested in the Michael chart to begin with was the fact that they said that there are a finite number of roles. And from my husband, I had learned about the ideas in Egypt, and it made sense, but more than just their ideas. That people have a role through life, through all their lives, that they, starting with the infant soul, within this role they grow all the way. And they don't depart from that role, that essence of what they are. That essence stays the same. And its connection to other essences seems to be the same. Throughout one life after another, we seem to be connected to the same people, and we're all growing, but we have different places we're coming from. Now the essence the role is not the actual life role. In other words, a king soul is not necessarily king, okay? But I'm going to get to that. All right? From the time an entity is cast from the Tao to the time it reunites, the essence of the role of the individual does not change. If you begin as a sage, you will be a sage from your first life to your last, and you will be affected by your sageness. The same is true for all of the other 6 roles. There are 7 major roles in essence. They are chosen by you at the time. Your own soul chooses this. It's not assigned to you. At the time that it first is born or cast from the Tao. It is possible to experience all of life within the confines of any one role. These roles are slave, warrior, artisan, scholar, sage, priest, and king. Just as the level the soul manifests inwardly, perception, so the major role in essence manifests outwardly in attitudes and behavior. It is important for you to realize that none of these designations have social, political, economic, or worldly significance. We do not mean to imply that any of the political or social functions that are with the same names as the roles in essence are in any way comparable. They've taken English words and given those names to things because they can help you understand the roles through this, okay? There are 3 pairings of essence roles and 1 neutral. The pairs are slave and priest, artisan and sage, warrior and king, and the neutral role is scholar. I'm a warrior. I don't want to battle people. I don't want to fight. I can't stand fighting. I really am a very peaceful warrior. But as you can hear in my voice, I attack ignorance. I come on strong because I'm a warrior. Michael's a scholar. He's sitting there reading at the moment. But he observes. The scholar is very much observer and absorber of things. Linda's a sage. Want to know something about herbs? Linda can probably talk for 3 hours, right, Linda? Minimum.
I'm going to wake up slightly, but yes, sage. Sage can go on forever.
Sages love to tell you things. They love to be actors. I mean, almost all people in the theater are sages. But we'll get to that anyway.
In my sleep, yes.
The priest is the slave exalted. These roles express themselves in service to mankind, humanitarian ideals. In the priest, there is a sense of God consciousness and otherworldliness. A position could be in essence for slave or priest, as could social workers, nurses, or clergy. The priest will always seek a higher ideal or being to serve, and the slave will seek for a person or institution to serve. The priest sees the world as his congregation. The slave sees the world as his honored guests. Now, most of you know Drew. He's a slave. And he just loves cooking for us. I mean, he just loves cooking for people. I mean, at work he takes cookies and brownies, and at home he fixes all kinds of different things. And he loves grilling and barbecuing because he just loves doing it. And half the time, all the leftovers belong to somebody else because he never even eats them, even though they're great leftovers.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's...
Wind up eating is.
And he likes making wine and beer, all kinds of things like this. But honored guest, I mean, that really expresses it. Now, the sage is the artisan exalted. These roles manifest through self-expression. Artisans bring to life freshness and originality. Sages innate wisdom and sagacity. The sage will always search for the unique thing. The artisan will always try to create it. The sage views the world as his audience, the artisan as his model. I would say the word audience is probably the key to understanding sage. When you get to old sages and old artisans, it's not, although it's there, they are still capable of being all the other things, so it's not as defined as in the younger ages. Okay, just so I can mention that. That's true of everybody. The sage views the world as the sage accumulates knowledge like a sea sponge and is normally an excellent extemporaneous orator and wishes to share all knowledge acquired with all those within hailing distance. Okay? The king is the warrior exalted. These roles express themselves through leadership and the ability to influence motivation. The king takes charge through knowledge and inherent power, the warrior through an instinctive drive. The king will always seek to guide and rule, the warrior to command and explore. The king sees the world as his realm, the warrior as unconquered territory. The scholar is an intermediate role, an observer rather than a participant. All of life is vicarious rather than experiential. Regardless of the cycle or gender chosen by this soul, no scholar will ever be gushy, no matter how young a soul. Enthusiasm can be genuine, but it will usually be subdued. All reactions are low-key: grief, joy, pain, pleasure. The old scholar is detached, aloof, and often arrogantly intellectual. The scholar always seeks new knowledge and sees the world as an object to study. There are scholars in all races. Some cultures place great emphasis on intellectual pursuits. Testing these cultures would result in a preponderance of intellectually oriented youngsters. Some cultures are concerned primarily with survival in a hostile world. You would have more warriors in that culture. Most scholars have little regard for emotional entanglements unless they happen to be emotionally centered. Most scholars would prefer not to be bothered with the responsibility that goes along with these intrigues. You must not confuse the role of scholar with scholarship. There are more slaves than any other role in essence. Then artisans, then warriors, then scholars, then sages, then priests, and last and fewest kings. There are only 59 magnetic kings, that is 6th level old, in the world today. As you can see, it is an orderly progression. There is more need for slaves and artisans than for priests and kings, both in the cosmic sense and the material. More king souls have been slaves in this world than slave souls have been kings. This is partly because there are more collars than thrones available. Elizabeth I was a king. She was the greatest of all this world's leaders. Julius Caesar was a warrior, but a mature soul. Augustus Caesar was a sage, and Tiberius a scholar. Alexander the Great was a young king. Marcus Aurelius an old scholar. A great philosopher, but a poor leader. John Kennedy was a young king. Franklin Roosevelt was a mature sage. Theodore Roosevelt and Mao Zedong were young warriors. And Woodrow Wilson, a mature scholar. The sage soul that was Augustus Caesar was later Dag Hammarskjöld. On what basis are these roles assigned? They are not assigned. They are chosen. The slave is a service role in the menial sense, but it is possible to experience all of life within this framework, and the slave will always look rather woebegone regardless of their station in life, and they will appear poor regardless of material wealth. The manifested slaves make good but busy hosts as they worry about the comforts of those around them. The slave, in essence, identifies with the wrongs of humanity and tries to bring comfort in a material sense to many, and later in the older soul in a spiritual sense. The priest is a slave exalted. The priest was born with a sense of God consciousness or otherworldliness. Even young priests have this. The priest, in essence, chooses a life role where it is possible to bring comfort to many in a spiritual sense. The role, in essence, is not the life role. Priests don't have to practice religion. Your essence is your soul, that part of you which is immortal and eternal. The role you choose concerns only that interval you spend on the physical plane, which is brief, to say the least. Let me see. Baby slaves constitute the majority of downtrodden housewives found throughout the world. It's a perfect role for a baby slave. What other occupation reaps so few rewards and at the same time enforces the role over and over? Baby artisans often choose to do things with their hands, but not usually fine art. They may become craftsmen, printers, metalworkers, carpenters, smiths of various sorts. Also routine filing and assembly work. A baby warrior can be found in law enforcement, in smaller cities especially. Baby scholars are teachers of children, filled with dribble and inspirational material. Baby sages often take to the stage in homegrown theatrical or evangelism, which is very popular with baby sages. It gives them a righteous stance from which to display their hand. Writers of moralistic children's stories are often baby sages or scholars. Some baby sages have higher expectations and would be evangelists of fundamentalistic religions or good party men in politics. Baby priests often become ministers and counselors of fundamentalistic churches or other religions, though not as publicly active as baby sages, who are in it for the applause rather than the uplift. Baby kings often seek local political arenas. Sheriff is a popular choice. They get the prestige and the attractive physical facade. Preserver of law and order. Mayor is another role that keeps many a baby king occupied. When baby souls seek wider fields for themselves, the results are often disastrous. Ethelred the Unready was a baby scholar, as was a recent American political leader. Like most baby souls, Ethelred was terrible on horseback and often unseated by his mount. Young slaves are often found in menial occupations by choice. They seek quite unconsciously, but they seek nevertheless. Young artisans are busy creating masterpieces in large, prestigious studios where the opportunity for rapid advancement is quite likely. They are rarely avant-garde. They will willingly create whatever is selling. Young warriors pursue either the actual armed services, often for foreign powers as hire, or athletics. Young female warriors find active roles in teaching and the like, many of them preferring physical education to classrooms. Young scholars often become professors in large universities. Young sages seek the stage in a literal sense. They also make enthusiastic salesmen and teachers. Young priests in the power and passion modes are often military leaders, particularly of forces with traditions or special functions such as the Knights Templar or the Green Berets. The young soul cycle also finds priests in genuine clerical garb, or at least involved in good works, social services, crusades. Young kings rise to greatness as politicians or quite often as military officers. where maximum exposure could really occur. The late, young, and mature cycles are creative cycles for sages and artisans. Mature slaves turn their attention to more philosophical aspects of service, such as physical therapists, psychologists, other occupations where personal work is valued. Mature artisans generally constitute the avant-garde. The works they produce are visionary rather than stylistic. Rebellion against the norm is the hallmark of this cycle. Almost without exception, the great masterpieces and all the most important engineering discoveries are the work of mature artisans whose genius is often not recognized during their lifetime. Warriors will turn to causes that are emotionally and psychically appealing or become strategists, such as systems analysts, negotiators, cartographers, and the like. Mature scholars will turn to solitary research, study, and philosophy. Mature sages often write sweeping sagas and plays in which they envision themselves in the starring role, but they rarely actually appear. Mature sages, when they play to a smaller audience of select friends who are unlikely to be hostile. Many accomplished dramatists here, many fine playwrights, and not a few prominent authors. Mature sages and mature warriors also make good stage and film directors and occasionally shine in the law courts as prominent attorneys. Mature priests turn to dignified, quiet counseling, dream therapy, psychiatry, the Quaker and Buddhist faith, anything that allows them to teach their spiritual path to others. Mature kings often seek ways to be rid of political power and to serve their subjects in more abstract ways. Teachers, artists, musicians, scientists. Those who accept political or corporate power will use it with careful judgment and a deep sense of responsibility. Slaves and kings have the need to serve in common. One helps lift, the other draws upward. Both are necessary. Old slaves strive to bring comfort to those around them, but not in the militant manner that those in the younger cycles employ. Old slaves make marvelous grandmothers. Old artisans create sporadically. This is the cycle of unfinished masterpieces. They will start off on a project with fire and enthusiasm but never finish it, losing interest when they realize how much work is involved, or how much practice, or how much study. The old artisan's home is littered with the corpses of yesterday's fervor. Old warriors never lose their drive entirely. Their work will tend to be solitary, often creative. Many orchestral musicians, conductors, writers of historical novels, fine craftsmen, and horse breeders are old warriors. Each in their own way indulges in old soul nostalgia. Old scholars live simple lives as teachers, but rarely in schools. They simply teach their perception of the logos wherever they are. Now, you all have a couple of pages that look like... This is one of them. It's near the back, probably. And this is talking about how many souls at the different levels there are in this world. As you can see, it's near the back. We'll start at the back. Huh?
What page is it?
It's the one that has the bell back on it. That's the one we come up with next. Find it?
Is this it?
Yep. As you can see, all 7 levels of infant souls in this world only equal 1% of the population of this world. 1 in 100 souls. That's a lot of them. There's still 50 million of them around, but most of them you never encounter. 12% of the population are baby souls. 43% are young souls, and another 31 are mature. So between those, you've got 74% of the whole Earth's population. And then there are 13% that are old souls. The number of old souls equal the number of baby plus infant souls. Okay? So that shows you. Then you have this. See this page? It was right next to that one, wherever you found that one. We never found it. That's it. Okay? No. It's not that one. It's that one. Did you look on the other side of that one? The one that you have down, just in case? What's on the other side of that one? Oh. Yeah, let me have you set for a minute. I'll give you that because you're going to want that back in place in a minute. Thank you. Now,
I lost these. Which one's mine I lost?
this one, it was right next to that where it was. Okay. Yep, that's it. And after that, we're going to go into these, which is just before that. Is that 5 and 6? Okay? If you look at that, rather than have me read it, you can read it in water. Just everybody read it themselves, and you will see by nation the kind of soul ages you have. Yeah, just read it.
Yeah, that's no problem.
I'll be back. Unless you want to read it, though. No, I didn't think so. And then if you all want to take a break, you need to get something to eat.
No, I don't know. Thank you.
Was a second level old scholar. Beethoven was a third level old scholar. Berlitz was a fourth level young priest. Botticelli, fifth level mature artisan. John Calvin, third level young priest. Catherine the Great, fourth level young king. Cervantes, fourth level mature sage. Charles I, sixth level young sage. Charles II, fifth level mature scholar. Chopin, fourth level young priest. Claudius Caesar, sixth level young scholar. Oliver Cromwell was a sixth level young priest. J.L. David, seventh level mature scholar. St. Dominic, the fourth level young priest. George Fox, a seventh level mature scholar. And St. Francis, a fourth level mature priest. Gauguin, Gauguin was a fourth level old artisan. Van Gogh was a fourth level mature artisan. Handel, fourth level young sage. Ingres, fourth level mature artisan. Ivan the Terrible, a third level young warrior. Jack the Ripper was a fourth level mature priest. Does that make sense to you?
No.
I will explain about Jack the Ripper. There are 3 beliefs prevalent. I described what is probably the most popular one, or certainly one of the popular ones. There were only 3 women killed to begin with. Jack the Ripper didn't kill a lot of people. 3 women were killed. 2 were prostitutes. The third was not. But the third was made to look like the other 2, and that's why the other 2 prostitutes were killed, all because of the third one, who happened to be a woman that the heir to the throne was in love with and had a child by. And when she was killed, this child, which would have been the heir to the English throne, disappeared. They know that there was a large carriage scene with the panel blacked out, which would have shown who it belonged to. Would have had a crest on the side, and that was covered. It was the scene of all 3 of the killings. They know that there were Masonic Rosicrucian type symbols found at the scenes. And they know that the people were all three killed with the skill of a surgeon. And there's a very strong belief that the royal surgeon killed them because he wanted to protect the integrity of the royal lineage. They didn't kill the child, but they killed the mother and took the child. And that is why it was done. So this person, being a priest, thought that this is what would protect the throne and the stability of the empire, and so it was done. Okay? Would that make sense for Jack the Ripper being the fourth level mature priest? Okay. That just sort of reinforces my belief. I believed it before I read that. Jeremiah was a young sage. Joan of Arc was a sixth level young priest. The Pharaoh Kamasi was a third level young slave. Da Vinci was a fifth level old scholar, which may make sense of some of the later books that we have. And I don't know if you've seen the one on the Shroud of Turin. It's rather fascinating. There's absolutely no doubt, if you really look at the picture of Da Vinci and you look at the face, that's his face. And he is the only one that would have had the skill to have painted the silly thing the way it was. And they showed how it could have been done. There's a very good... A lot of people have placed it at the wrong time. The cloth isn't the right age. Going back. It would be the right age for this. Anyway. De Medici is a second level old king. Louis XIV is a fifth level mature sage. Goya is a sixth level mature priest. Michelangelo, fourth level mature artisan. Mozart, third level mature sage. Mussorgsky, fourth level mature priest. Pope Paul IV, sixth level mature priest. Prokofiev, fifth level mature scholar. Puccini, fifth level mature sage. Ramses II, sixth level mature priest. Richard III, fifth level mature warrior. Rossini, seventh level mature scholar. Shakespeare, fifth level mature scholar. Sibelius, fourth level mature scholar. Stravinsky, first level old warrior. And boy, does his music sound like it. He sounds like he's attacking things frequently. Well, I to get into it. Tchaikovsky, fourth level mature scholar. Verdi, fourth level mature scholar. And Wagner, fourth level mature priest. Then we have the second set of them. Now the first set were done by the person that wrote the whole book that this whole thing is taken from. The second set was done by a different designer. And they are all about people in today's world. Okay? Alan Alda is a sixth level mature sage. Yuri Andropov, first level old slave. Jimmy Carter, third level mature priest. Edison, seventh level young artisan. Einstein, seventh level mature artisan. Eisenhower, seventh level mature king. Jerry Falwell, first level young warrior. Benjamin Franklin, seventh level mature scholar. Sigmund Freud, second level mature scholar. Bucky Fuller, seventh level mature artisan. Billy Graham, seventh level young sage. Why doesn't that fit? Just about to go into the mature cycle. Gary Hart, third level old scholar. Adolf Hitler, seventh level mature sage. Seventh level mature sage.
Okay.
All right. Hitler was a paranoid schizophrenic. That's a given. We know that. His country was in terrible shape after World War I. The people were hungry. They were out of work. His method was insane. His method was horrible. What he did to the Jews was, there is no acceptance on any level of it. But in his madness, he picked on people that he had come to hate. And he attempted to rebuild Germany by destroying them, basically. He actually did a rather effective job. He put the people back to work. And he got his people fed by going to war.
Definitely loved it here in South
And if you have ever read the book by Speer, He had plans to rebuild Germany, beautiful plans for it. Misguided, sick, but it makes sense of this particular thing. Particularly when you couple it with being paranoid schizophrenic. Because you're going to feel, if you're paranoid, that you're being attacked, that the Jews actually are this bad. Anyway, that's where that comes from. That makes sense. That helps you make sense. Certainly, the sage comes out in his oratory and in his book. And I mean, his plans, they were grand, marvelous plans, except for the horrible way of bringing them about. So it makes sense of this. Paranoid schizophrenic, 7th level mature sage is what got you that. Anyway, Jesse Jackson, 7th level young priest. Michael Jackson, 1st level mature sage. Just barely out of the young cycle. Thomas Jefferson, 2nd level mature king. Jim Jones, 7th level baby sage. And boy, wasn't he. You know who that was?
Yes.
Died, yeah, the poison Kool-Aid.
The one that had all these people, that took his people
killed
all off
900
to
people in
South
Guyana.
America and then had them all drink Kool-Aid and killed all these people.
My girlfriend in college lived in Guyana, and her brother helped carry the bodies away.
That's the 7th level baby sage. Then there's Carl Jung, one of the two 7th level old in this case a priest. Immanuel Kant is a 7th level young sage. Abraham Lincoln was a 7th level young artisan. Abraham Maslow, 7th level mature priest. Shirley MacLaine, 7th level mature, guess what? Sage. Walter Mondale, 6th level mature sage. Marilyn Monroe, 5th level young sage. Willie Nelson, 3rd level old scholar. If you listen to his work and listen to the man, that makes sense too. Richard Nixon, 6th level young sage. Ronald Reagan, 5th level young sage. Joan Rivers, 5th level young sage. Oral Roberts, 7th level baby priest. Carl Rogers, 6th level mature priest. Bertrand Russell, 7th level mature sage. Scriabin, 5th level mature sage. B.F. Skinner, 4th level mature artisan. Benjamin Spock, 5th level young king. That's the baby doctor. And Mother Teresa is a 7th level old priest. Harry Truman is a 6th level mature sage, and John Wayne is a 3rd level mature sage. Does that help you understand how these things go together? That's why we include it. All right? None of it. If you will get your old Michael chart, the one that you had on top to begin with, did somebody happen to have a pendulum? I thought you might, either one of you.
What's a pendulum?
Not the guy his. Okay, we'll use his. I got his. We're doing it. He got this pendulum. Now, if you will bring your chart down to me along with a pencil or pen and stand opposite me.
Don't let everybody rush at once.
Oh, I'll let him do it since he gave me the pendulum.
That's what I figured he was doing.
And I'll just keep this pendulum on doing that. All right. Now I want you to state your name. Just state your name to me. Okay. Did he bring a pencil or pen? We'll use your pen, your pendulum. You can put an X, circle it, whatever you want, but mark that one. Oh, now let me tell you. The goal tells you what you're seeking in this world. By the time you get to be a mature or an old soul, mostly you're seeking the more positive goals of the thing. Sometimes in the younger cycles, the bottom parts of it are more apt to apply. But for the most part, in the older souls, it's only the top 2/3 that make any sense. The next one, mode, simply says the manner in which you go about seeking it in this lifetime. Now, these things all vary. The role stays the same through all your lifetimes. I don't think it said it there, but we should. One reason for choosing the slave role, you have to go through less lifetimes to gather all of this as a slave than in any other role. So slaves take fewer lifetimes to get through the entire cycle, which is an advantage that they marry off against being in that service role. Of course, by the time you're an old soul, you'll enjoy the service part of it, so there's no pain. But anyway, that's why the soul at the beginning would choose it, because it has fewer lifetimes to go through. Just thought I'd mention that. The mode, as I say, the goal is what you're seeking or want. The second is the manner in which you are manifesting who you are. That'll change from lifetime to lifetime. The attitude is what the world seems like, how you seem to perceive the world. Okay? Now, I'll come back over here to feature. There are 3 features for everybody. My image is, in younger souls or in the first part of any old soul's life, you learn to deal with the 3 features that you have. They can be very challenging to younger souls. To older souls, once you get them working together, they aren't a challenge. They absolutely work together. For instance, mine has lowliness and arrogance and stubbornness in that order. Now, lowliness is humility and arrogance is pride. And what I keep telling everybody is, have a sense of your own worth, but don't think you're better than anybody else. And that's how those 2 work together. Because you should have the humility to know you're no better than others. You may feel you're luckier, but you certainly know better. But you should have the pride, the sense of having a sense of your own worth, okay? And then determination is my 3rd. Okay? Stay on that. All right, and the last one, the centers that I will do, everybody has all 7 centers. By the time you get to be an old soul, you usually have at least 1 center operating at a 7 level, which is the highest level in operating. Sometimes you have more than 1 at that level. I only have 1. Most females who have given birth or probably will give birth, I have a sexual center that's a 5 or greater. Because the most sexual thing you can do is carry an infant in your womb. The most sexual thing you can do is not have sex, it's carry an infant. That's a very sexually oriented thing. A male can't do it. That's a very female sexual orientation. This center isn't talking about how sexually active you are. It's talking about how much your sexual center, your maleness or femaleness, has to do with who you are compared to the other centers, okay? That's all it is. And then the moving center, for instance, the moving center is your physical level of activity. I have a 1 for a moving center. I have both narcolepsy and a thyroid that doesn't work. Therefore, my moving center as a 1 makes sense. It isn't that I don't do anything, but compared to everything else I have, it's very low level, okay? When I got sick this time, I can hardly move. Anyway, your numbers will have no relation to the numbers on somebody else's chart. They will only have a relation to each other within this chart. And your numbers, in a past life, you might have had a couple of things at a 7 level and not have them at that level in this lifetime. This is talking about what you're using in this lifetime, at what level relative to the other things. And 7 means this particular part is going full out, and 1 means it's operating at the lowest level it could operate at. But it has to be operating because they're all there, okay? Just want you to understand that before I do it. Okay, now I'll come back to Paul. This is your. Wait until we get them all together, because sometimes the individual may not make sense, but when you put them together with the others, they do. Just a minute. Okay, I said this. Okay, I'm going to have you write 1, and then 2, and then 3, because these are in that order. 1 is the strongest on the feature. Okay. 1. 2. 3. And then over here. Let's start again. 4. 5. 3. 7. 6. I wasn't sure on that, but that's, I can go back and check. 6. 7. I'll write the words HI here and here and here. And write LO here. Okay, now go look at it and we'll see if it makes sense. If it doesn't, we'll talk about it a little later. Don't get thrown by the words, whatever you do. Sometimes one of them in isolation makes no sense, but when you put them together with the others, they do. Hopefully they will. If not, we'll talk about it. Please state your name.
Ready? So it's going to that.
Why the hell? Okay, you say so.
What?
That she's a sage. You feel like a sage? No. That's what's really strange. I would think artisan maybe, but it said sage. You accumulate knowledge like a sea sponge?
I don't think so.
She is a sage.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely your sage.
You're sage, you just never manifest.
I
It's
never.
not manifesting it. But you are, that's, yeah.
That is your name.
Yeah. You do like to share.
You're aware of what people's motivations.
You have a potential, if you find something you really love, you want everyone to know about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we talk over each other. We both do it.
Yeah.
That's
She likes to
your
talk.
goal.
I will say that first.
Which is unity and harmony, okay? And that makes sense, because there's something I'll keep hearing you more.
Julie? Mother, make her stop it.
Stop it here.
And this is your emotion, you can see it right there. It would have been easier if it was this, but it isn't. All right, now your features here. I tell you the first one, Marco one. That's two. All right, that's three. Don't go away. Does this begin to make sense to you? Huh?
I'm not sure about that one, but I knew that one was in there, and I knew that one was in there.
Don't you feel a sense of your own worth? This isn't a bad thing, don't understand. Knowing your own value, but just having a sense of your own goodness.
See?
You do that.
What?
You know your own worth. You believe in your own worth. That's what that is when you use it well. That's what that is.
Well,
Yes, when you come
I
using
put you here in terms, I guess, of the negative.
No.
Because you're a pessimist.
No, that's her impatience. She's impatient for things to happen. She has a... But I think I trust Gio's others fit with you, but let's get over to this one now. Six. That's what it says, I think. The six. Six. You're sort of going fulfilled here, aren't we? Five.
child lead by Jean Gaines.
This one's also 5. 7. 7. 5. No, this is, you've got everything at a 5 and above, so you've got nothing operating at a lower level. You're just going full tilt with what you're doing, is what it's saying, okay? The lowest ones for you are like, and the highs are here. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. I don't know.
It's talking about the intellect and imagination, those are absolutely on high with you. Whereas your emotional and your empathetic are the lowest, but they're still very, very active. That's the whole thing. You have nothing that isn't very active. And the sexual movements are out in the middle between those.
You know which one was one of the features of it?
Stubbornness?
To wistful and trade.
Huh? Determination. That's a pretty look. Enjoy seeing you.
Sister-in-law, my family.
That's what sisters do. You could probably do it to her too.
She does.
Not at this unstoppable level.
You do it in different
Please
ways.
state your
dear.
name, please, and there's your pen so you can mark it on handy.
Who take that?
Now you're going to mark 1, then 2, then 3 on this. One. Two. Got a little bit of a dream mother, did you?
What?
Hello.
A bit of stubbornness, but it's only number 3 with her determination. She picked an easier coupling of things than you did. I'm serious. She picked modes and well, things that work easier than you picked for this life.
These have to be difficult.
For yourself. You picked
For everybody else, too.
Not necessarily.
No,
but you do
no,
like to be hard on yourself.
Okay, you want to pick some things that are rather hard for you. Now, this is one where we give you a number of each of them, okay? Five. Five. Six. Five. Seven. Seven. Again, everything is very active. Look, these 3 are at the lowest level, but they're all still very, very active. But above them are these 2. And above them are these 2 full out. That's what you're doing with this life. That's what you're operating on in this life. Does that make sense? Okay. Want to come down? Rita?
Go down. Go down after me. Oh, I want to see.
What books to use later for? And you don't want to use the good one. So I said, I gave you one good one so you can copy it for friends, and one so you can make your own out however you want them, okay? Oh, you give her back her pen for one thing. No, Mary. Would you state your name?
Rita?
Just mark that some way or other. Okay. Anywhere there, within that square. Now we're going to have you mark a 1 on the first one. tell you, this is the most determined class history that I've ever had. Everybody's got determination as one of their features. Then the world needs more and more. Okay, now over here on the median number for each one. Okay. Two. Six. Mhm. Seven. Don't make that confused with a two.
Check the little approximate seven.
Whatever. So you, just make sure you see this.
It's a seven.
Five. That's it. Okay. Anywhere in there. Six. No. Right here, we're going right down this line. Seven. All right, now what this says here. This and this are operating full on as completely as they can in this lifetime. Okay? These two. And these are operating slightly less than that. And these are operating slightly less than that. But this is way down at a level 2. And having this at a 7 and this at a 2 probably explains the epilepsy. Does that make sense? Because the moving center, it isn't, if you have it, it's just not as under control.
I joke if I didn't have seizures, I'd go mad.
And the impulsiveness is strong.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay? It helps understand it. Now, your goal is togetherness, is unity.
Okay, yes.
And you're passionate, very
Yes.
self-actualized and wanting to achieve it. That's the way you go at it. You believe and you look at the world rather realistically, you know.
Yes.
No idealism or anything.
Yes.
And, but impatience or this, that again, I think that goes into the epilepsy, the neuritis. I think you see how this feature, unfortunately, is contributing to that.
Yes.
And expendability or sacrifice is second now.
Well,
This is placing yourself second, somebody else first, is basically what it is. Okay?
yeah, okay.
You're thinking about others and caring, and you are very determined, and that's the thing that gives you the going on. You're using it in a very good way.
Okay.
You see how that works?
Yes, so we need to find my value on it.
The determination helps you to overcome some of what you have to face.
Yes.
But the fact that you've chosen this as one of your features also means that you put yourself in a position where others do use you.
Yes.
Okay? And so this chart might help you understand yourself. That's about all I can explain that one, okay?
So,
Oh, it said, right here. I'm sorry, you're a priest. You want to help people go upward.
oh, it says sage. Okay. That may be confused. I think it's
You know, actually, it's some of the activity level in there of the priest that you have here. the passion of the priest.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so rather than the sage. Okay?
Yes, I believe you.
That's probably the,
That make
that's a definite difference.
right. And that was the coupling of the passion with the priest instead of being the sage. Now, do you want an explanation of yours? See how it works together? Okay. You can pick up your pendulum when you're done.
What were you, Matea?
Me, sixth level priest.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
It really does make sense.
Priest.
I only have one
Six.
thing on it that doesn't make sense.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that. What does or doesn't, what doesn't make sense to you? Anything?
Original fits pretty much to a T, but I always thought that would have been priest.
Instead of,
slave.
are you teaching spirituality? Have you found a God or a thing to serve? Or are you helping others to grow up with where you're growing up from?
Tend to be pretty good at challenging skeptics.
All right, but you're helping, so what are you challenging them to do?
Be open to spirituality.
All right, but to any spirituality, right? That is what a slave would do. A priest would have a particular spirituality generally, but they would, not necessarily. Drew is a very good example of a slave, an old slave. I think he's a 6th level old slave. I think, I don't remember.
Something like that. I
But I
don't
think
know.
that's a, is there 6th level, maybe 7th, I don't think so. But in your case, please remember something, and this is the thing to always remember. Old souls, all old souls, particularly the later level old souls, can act out of any of these 7 roles well. In other words, you may be acting somewhat as a priest, but you're going to come at it from the position of a slave. Just like I may like to study, but I'm going to be a warrior. Or I may like to talk, which is what a sage does, but I still am a warrior, basically. Whereas Linda may want to do different things, but she's going to be out of the sage, and Michael's a scholar. No matter what he does, even if he's acting as a priest and wanting the spiritual things, he does it from this position of a scholar. It's different. Does it help you understand? You don't have to accept what I did, but I believe it's accurate. I didn't do it consciously, I let my unconscious.
Makes more sense.
Because you're not at this level serving a God. You're looking at each person saying, I want to get them there. I want to help lift them up, right? Which is what I want to do as a warrior. Help wake each person up.
Just an acknowledgement of the higher power, no matter
Right.
what.
Well, by the time you reach the 7th level, you are aware of that. I mean, you can't help but be.
What level is like?
5th or 6th, whichever was. Pardon me. 5th level. You're 5th level old slave, is what it says. Actually, very equivalent, I think, to Drew in that. How about you? What doesn't make sense on yours?
Well, the goal and the mold are the two things that I kind of feel I haven't had in my life.
Well, but isn't that what you want?
Yeah.
Oh, that's your goal. And what about the mode? What's that?
The confidence.
You believe in yourself, but sometimes you don't look at what somebody else is. That may be. How about as a mother?
You seem to be a good mother.
Do you feel you're doing your best job there? I'm not saying is anybody perfect or are your kids perfect. I'm saying, do you have confidence in what you're doing as a mother? Of course you do. Of course you do, about getting, just what you just said earlier today, about keeping her in that school. I mean, that's where that comes in. You're absolutely sure of where you're coming from in this. And it's what you're using. Now, don't look at an episode with one human being and make that your whole life. It isn't.
No, I felt I have lacked confidence since grade school.
Well, that's something you have to work on. And that's the thing about a feature. A feature is something you have to work on, but when you get it working for you, it really does. The feature challenges you.
That's the mode, the power.
The feature challenges you. What feature do you have that challenges you?
The impatience. I mean, that was the lowest one you listed, but that's the one I think that causes me the most trouble.
I have to look at it to see what I'm talking about.
Okay. Thought you weren't visual.
That's why she has to look at it. She can't remember. That
I
way.
have no visual memory. It's that I don't work visually. You are confident that what you're doing is right at work. I see it.
Mm-hmm.
That you bring to bear. That is your manner.
There are some times when I'm not, but yeah.
Right. And you have a sense of the goodness of what you are.
This is what's caused
All right. And
some of the financial stuff.
And the thing is, impatience is a really good thing there because you are impatient to have it all over with. Absolutely. Now, once you get your impatience under control, it can make you go do things right away and get them done. But it can also get in the way because it's like, I have to have it now.
Yeah.
So it's a curse and a blessing. And when you get it really working for you and not against you, then it'll be just a blessing. But until you get that, it'll be the curse. And your determination goes right with it. You're determined to be impatient. On the other hand, you're also determined to know the goodness of what you are. So, do you see how that... I mean, it really expresses the Mary we know. Doesn't it?
I think so.
And you are pragmatic. You for the most part, in almost
I'm not
everything,
negative, I'm pragmatic.
in almost everything, you accept what is there. It's not an idealistic space, and that will allow you to overcome the negatives in your life if you will allow yourself to be what you are. Quit fighting it. Okay? Does that make sense?
Well, I have been accused, first by him and then by his children, of being negative about everything, about being the total pessimist. And I keep saying that I'm just being practical.
But that's it. That's it. You are being practical.
They're just got too unrealistic of an ideal.
Mary,
And of course she's an idealist.
Mary,
Right.
there's-
And your mother's a pragmatist, which means she accepts what is. You want to make whatever is into what you think it should be.
While you're going around trying to fix your friends.
Now, Mary, Mary,
Well, yes, you are.
that's me.
Yes, you are. That's because you're a priest, too. Because you want to fix
It has to
things.
come from your heart. It comes from
This
your
is why
heart.
I'm
No,
the
it's right.
control figure in my group of friends.
Right.
They
Because
make
It
it
has to come from their heart.
Yeah, that's it.
When they say
You
this
wanna
and that
fix it.
about you, that's not coming from their heart. That comes from an
But you are an idealist because you look for the ideal situation. Say, this can be accomplished. Whether it can or not, that's the way you look at it. Whether your mother looks at things and says, well, this is what it is. What do I do with it?
But
And
hang
she
on.
deals with it.
You don't necessarily know what's going on with your mother. You may think one thing one way with her. You don't know what that's right.
But she's not negative. She has to deal with the finances of the real world.
That's right.
And it is having to deal with the real world for you, for your sister and herself, that may look to you like negative, but she's just dealing with what she has to work with, and this is what she can do. Whereas you're looking at the ideal situation of what it should be. And that's, but she isn't negative. She's just pragmatic.
Stop it.
So you see, this can help you understand her too.
Understand why he's, especially this one. Actually, this one I get.
Oh, this isn't a bad thing. Please don't misunderstand. This means you're centered in your own awareness. See, it says self-centered. Everybody is self-centered. Everyone. But most people don't know it. And so they place their center out somewhere outside themselves. It doesn't work. When this works well for you, and at this level it will work well for you. When you're self-centered, it means that you become aware of the world as you perceive it, and you're centered in it. And out of that, you want to help others. Does that make sense? Don't think the world tells you selfish is a bad word. Nobody on the face of the earth has ever done anything that was not selfish, ever. In selfishness, people will seek to avoid pain, which is a really stupid thing frequently, or they will selfishly seek gain. But everything we do has a selfish motive. It comes from ourself. And we say, well, I'm being unselfish in doing this. No, I'm being selfish. In teaching this, I'm selfish. In wanting to know about yourself, you're selfish. In wanting to help your friends, you're selfish because you want to be a helpful person. We do it for our reasons. So everything is a selfish act. But the society has taught you selfishness is a bad thing. Well, that's what makes it so hard for most people. Because they're being told being who you are out of your own center is bad. But it's the only thing anybody can be. It's why most people in this society are quite frustrated. It's why they're running on fear, on a sense of guilt, failure, things like that. But when you understand it, selfishness, I think that's maybe one of my own. But selfishness is the sense of coming from your own center. Okay? Now, in a bad sense, it would be when you are doing it just to avoid pain or just for material reasons or things like that. That would be a really stupid selfishness. But the selfishness of being who you are and knowing that's who you are and coming from your center and your awareness, that's a good thing. Okay? And in doing that, you also reject yourself as the center of everything. You're coming from your center, but you're saying I'm not more important than others. That it's everyone that's important. And that's how this goes with that. They're actually very well paired. It's sort of like my two right here, which are paired, the pride and humility. And so your two are paired in that same way. Okay? If you had this without this, it would be a mess. But because you have them both, that's very good. And then the determination, you're can be just as stubborn and determined as your mother.
Yeah. No, I don't see myself as passive. What about ridiculous? It says financial. I don't see myself.
Oh, sure, dynamic. You are not restrained. You're dynamic. You come in here and you tell us what's going on with everybody, and it's you've got to get over these words, okay?
Yeah.
Look at this. You can be quite insistent, and you're very dynamic and very vigorous in what you do, and that's the expression of that, okay? These words can throw you if you just look at the word at the top and think that explains it, all right? Does that help you understand?
Yeah.
All right. All right, one more thing. Rita, if you want to come down, I need a pen though, which I think you have.
Does that look like a court gesture?
I'm just kind of like, okay, get it over. Yeah.
Oh, this is all sort of messed up.
Shut up, the TV system.
Not a four-way stop.
Well, considering.
Instead, it's a crazy thing, if you came down, this is if you were coming, see, it's upside down. You're coming out, you're coming down 71, you got out the first belt next to it, you came up here, you'd have to go over here to this light, turn right, and then turn left to continue on the street. Yeah, but that's what I said, so it's easier. Come in, you're coming out 71, you come in line, you go through this light, you come all the way down.
Janet has
Down at this street, you look
Ryan
at
and Chelsea's
Forget
navigation
to let it ring
skills,
you.
so he's just going to follow
This
to
is the
Tanner's.
four-way stop.